We're back with more Seattle Real Estate Radio with your hosts, Christian Nossum and Dan Keller.
All right, hey, welcome back to Seattle Real Estate Radio on KKOL 1300. We've got a great show today. I'm really excited. One of the things that we forgot to talk about in the initial segment, we were talking about our homebuyer class, our homebuyer mixer we had this last week, but we've got another one coming up real quick. We're doing a couple of real quick back-to-back
We've been doing them every month for the last 3-4 months.
Well, they're starting to fill up, and they're filling up quick, and we don't want to turn people away. So this time we are hosting another beersandhomebuying.com mixer, November 16th at the Shelter in Ballard. So speaking of Ballard,
yes,
our guest today.
Yes.
Take it away,
you want me
man.
to take it away?
Yeah.
All right. So we have, and for some reason your last name is not on the front page here, Mark Garff.
Garff.
Garff?
Garff.
Good. I said it correct.
It's Danish for awesome.
There you go. Well, my last name's Nossum, which rhymes with awesome, so...
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Well, which is your website.
And the company's name.
Company. Which is awesome.
So we got two awesomes here. So we're setting off this segment really well.
It's going to be an awesome interview.
Off to a good start. Nice.
So Mark has been practicing landscape architecture for over 18 years. He is the principal of Project Groundwork, a 5-person landscape architecture firm that creates distinct gardens reflecting the personality of their owners, while respecting the environment. Project Groundwork designs a wide range of projects from intimate urban gardens to large park and recreation master plans throughout the Puget Sound. So,
yes.
Thank you very much for coming on and sharing your knowledge with all of us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for doing a show about landscape architecture.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's great.
Yes. Well,
there's not going to be a lot of visual today. Mainly audio.
That's okay. We can talk about it.
We could maybe put some in the video.
Will. Yeah, we'll
if
definitely
you,
do
if
that.
you have anything that examples and stuff that you want to have shown over the video, we can have our video guy put those on. So
that'd be great
because we do have video too.
I'll shoot you some images.
Yes. All right. So first, why don't you explain what the hell the difference is between landscape architecture, landscape designer, landscape contractor? What does all that mean? Because I don't have any clue.
Yeah.
I probably should know, but I don't know. But that's why you're on today.
All right. Well, I'm glad you asked that because it is a point of confusion for some people, especially when they're hiring a landscape architect for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So a landscape architect landscape architecture is a protected practice in all 50 states. So if you want to practice landscape architecture, you have to have the schooling, have the experience, and actually pass a state licensing exam.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just like architecture or engineering or being a dentist or a doctor. You have to have the skills and pass the tests and get your license to call yourself a landscape architect.
Nice.
So
you're a little smarter than the average Joe.
Yeah, I like
in terms of landscape, at least. We'll go with that.
Yeah, well, let's keep it there. Yeah.
Don't go crazy on it.
So a landscape designer, anyone can call themselves a landscape designer, whether they have the background or not. And a lot of them do have the background, just haven't taken the test.
Got it.
But if someone is, say, a master gardener and they decide they want to design gardens, they can call themselves that and do that and put up a shingle. So you don't get this backing and the education necessarily, and the licensing and the liability that comes with being a landscape architect. But there are some good designers out there. So buyer beware.
Go on. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to go into landscape contractor.
Yeah. No, do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So landscape contractors. So these are the guys that actually come out and build the project.
Got it.
There are some firms that do both, landscape architecture and building, design build firms. Our firm just focuses on design, and then we have some great contractors that we work with that actually build the project for us. We stay involved at the very end and make sure that they execute
follow through with the plan.
Exactly. Yeah. Execute the vision.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I guess that kind of tells me what you do. So you're more on the design phase, the front end. You execute, or you help the contractor execute the actual vision, but you're more just the design.
Yeah.
And so why would I want someone like that versus just the landscape contractor, just some random guy on the side of the road or whatever, to do the job that maybe I have an idea. Hey, I want to throw some plants over here and maybe a little pond over here and this over here. And So sell me on why I should want
Right.
to use that.
You could do that.
I could.
You could rely on
It
that.
wouldn't look great, but I could.
and that's where I was going.
Okay.
The landscape contractors, bless their hearts, they want to put in a wall.
Yeah.
And they'll just tell the owner, I'm going to do this kind of wall, and I'm going to put it in, and it goes in, and maybe you're not very happy about it. And maybe they didn't think about where it should really go, how tall it should be, how to actually build it. I've seen some train wreck construction out there. So if you
Yes.
have a landscape architect that shows up front, we know whether or not you're going to need a permit. We know whether or not there are critical areas on site. We think about the whole site as a system. So for residential landscape architecture, for instance, we look at the whole property. It's like, how can we make everything out here sort of work together? How can we make your indoor living flow into the outdoors? How can we make it consistent and feel good kind of all the way around? And we solve problems. We see things that aren't working, and we know how to fix them. Drainage, for instance. We know how to build a rain garden. We know how to build walls, and we know how to detail the construction aspects of landscape architecture, walls, rockeries, hardscape, planting is a big component, irrigation, everything that you might build outside, we can sort of design up front and then work with a contractor to make sure it's done right.
Nice. Take it out of my hands and put it in your hands.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we stay involved to the very end, making sure that you don't have to deal with the contractor necessarily. I mean, you're involved for sure.
Yeah.
But we sort of manage them and make sure it turns out great.
Okay. So give me a couple examples or situations where hiring a landscape architect, I guess, would be helpful. What are some examples of when that's probably a good idea?
We get a lot of our inquiries when people buy a new home. They show up on site. They see the landscape. It's maybe been neglected.
Yeah. Quite often.
A lot of times. And they want to change what things look like and how things work outside, both visually and just kind of programmatically.
Yeah.
There's a lot of features that people want to add. Fire pits are huge right now.
Yep.
Outdoor living, covered outdoor spaces. So we can take a look at that and figure out the best way to do it.
Nice.
Not just throw something out there and put a patio right over the dirt. We know exactly how to build it, how to make it work with everything else that's happening, and whether or not it's going to meet code, whether or not it'll be safe, how long it will last, that sort of thing.
Basically, you don't just throw stuff up there. You actually think about it up front, make sure it actually flows with the house.
Yeah.
Make sure it connects with the house so that it's not just like, oh, there's a fire pit over here, but that makes no sense based on where it is, with the house, with the style, the type of fire pit,
right? All
that stuff. You kind of make it all flow together.
Right, yeah. We make it kind of reflect the architecture of the home if that's important. Cool. And each homeowner it's a very individual process, a garden. It's their garden. It's made for them. It may not necessarily be what the next owner wants, and that's what we find a lot of times, that a garden is really a personal expression of that person, and they love it, and they live there, and they live in it, and then they move, and maybe the next owner isn't so crazy about some of the things. So that's where we come in. We also work from the very beginning with new construction.
That was just what I was going to ask you. So when is the best time to bring you in? Say I'm building a new house. When should I bring you in and involve you? Because you kind of do have that big overview. Here's the house. Oh, crap, I kind of forgot about the yard. What are we going to do there?
Yeah, it's great if we could come in at the very beginning. And we could work with the architect or the builder to make sure they site the house correctly.
I could see how that would be a big deal, where the house is actually sitting on the land to best utilize the plan that maybe the owner actually wants.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if there's a lot of grade changes. We can help make those transitions. We can, help foresee, drainage problems or other issues with the site.
That was the first thing that came to mind: drainage problems and grade with new construction, or if you're doing a tear down. We just did a 2-part segment on new construction, which you piggyback on top of it actually. So
nice,
it's great. So it's taking good notes here.
And we work hand in hand with the architect. Working with them on the site plan because they have a vision for the home and what everything should look like, and so we play nice and make sure that that it's the vision that everyone wants, the owner, the architect, and we help make sure that it's beautiful when it's all done.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Yeah.
So I've kind of lately, and I talked about this right before you came on, we had a huge magnolia tree in our front yard, and it was so massive that you couldn't even see the house. It blocked out all the light.
Yeah.
It killed all the grass down below, and all the plants below it were dying too because it was just literally cutting everything out. You couldn't see any light.
Yep.
So we recently just cut that back, and we can actually see our house now.
Yay.
We're like, wow, that looks like crap. I didn't know our house looked that bad. It really needs a paint job.
But you're getting more light in.
But
right?
we have a lot more light, which is
Yeah.
great. Is curb appeal a big thing that people hire you for? Is that something that they're initially talking to you about, like saying, hey, I know in 5-10 years, I may have just bought the house, but I know in 5-10 years I'm going to want to resell. And curb appeal is a big deal, regardless of when you're in the house.
Right.
Is that something that people kind of hire you for? Or are they more not even thinking, maybe that's just my weird brain as a real estate agent thinking about curb appeal? But
No, people are definitely thinking about it. They want their home to look good, to be set off by the landscape, to fit in well, and if it's designed well and it looks good and it's long lasting and it's not a mess, it's going to add value to your house.
Yeah.
So a good design can really add value down the road, and a lot of clients are looking for that. It's usually secondary though to the new outdoor living spaces that they want to see.
Yeah, which is
Especially-
usually in the back, not in the front.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it's in the front because it has to be. And
Yeah,
Then we screen it and make sure it's cozy and
Yep.
they have some privacy. But yeah, they want to. A lot of these houses in Seattle are on these tiny lots, and so we have to maximize sort of every square foot to give people as much living space as they can have in their yard.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, we might be. Shannon's my wife. We might be hiring him because I've recently gotten super obsessed now that we can actually see our house with the curb appeal.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you've got from the street up, you've got a little bit of grading, but you've got a ton of. I don't want to say overgrowth. That kind of sounds
That tree,
crazy, but yeah, you've got a ton of bushes and a ton of vegetation, if you will. Yeah. So
yeah, a lot of what we do is editing.
Yeah.
Take this out, and we've because we're in Seattle and it's dark a lot.
Yeah.
And we want the light, and humans naturally want to see out. It goes back to the African plains.
yeah.
Yeah.
We find ourselves taking trees down a lot to give more light, and then picking the appropriate tree and shrubs to kind of finish it off.
Well, we obviously have a lot more to talk about, so we got to take a quick break. Stay tuned for more Seattle Real Estate Radio in a second.
Stay tuned. There's more Seattle Real Estate Radio coming up here on Business Radio 1300 KKOL. We're back with more Seattle Real Estate Radio with your hosts, Christian Nossum and Dan Keller.
Hello, and welcome back to Seattle Real Estate Radio here on KKOL 1300 AM. We got Dan Keller on the mic trying to eat his microphone cover over here.
Yeah. Just kind of came off on me. I'm like, he's a tiger. My mic's attacking me in the nose.
So we are back with Mark Garff of Project Groundwork, and he is a landscape architect, and he's been giving us some really good tips. I started asking him about curb appeal. Next up is going to be some sustainability. It's a really hard word to say.
Yeah.
Sustainability questions. But then also just some general kind of more 101 type questions to get people up to date on why you should hire you versus just a landscape contractor who is kind of just the grunt work person. But why it's important, and I'm learning more and more why it's actually important to hire someone to do this versus me trying to figure out what looks good. And I don't know what.
Yeah.
dang
Well, we were
thing about
talking
plants.
We were talking over the break. So you have the perfect house for a guy for these types of services.
Yep.
And me too. I mean, I have a larger lot and have acreage, and so we had to obviously get back to the show. But I know you guys were talking on break about your particular house. I mean, you have a phenomenal backyard, but it's got a lot going on back there. Same thing with the front, with grading and everything. And so, but you mentioned sustainability. I think that's a big buzzword right now in Seattle.
Yeah. Well, everywhere
the
too.
whole
but
idea.
And I think it's more than just a buzzword. It's
Yeah.
actually truth. People are concerned about it, and they want to protect the land. And
Right.
but why don't, for people that don't know what that means,
Yeah.
why don't you quickly kind of
Yeah,
explain?
explain to them what you
All right.
explained to me over the break, because I was like, what?
So making something sustainable
Yeah.
means that that down the road the system is still functioning more naturally. Because we came in and we built this big city in the middle of a forest. We want to do things that are a little bit more environmentally friendly, that bring back a little bit of the natural systems that used to function here, and a lot of that has to do with drainage and infiltrating water on site and not having it run off and have to go through the sewage system. It can be incorporated in a rain garden to pick up your downspouts. Planting native plants to attract birds and critters back into your yard. Using drought-tolerant plants, so you're using less water for irrigation. One way to really make a difference is to tear out some lawn. A lot of people in Seattle don't water their lawns, and that's great.
Yeah.
But if they do, it's a huge resource hog, and
Yeah.
actually a lawn can be more maintenance than a well-designed landscape bed.
And that's an interesting point I hadn't even thought of, but that makes so much sense if you think about it.
Yeah.
For the lawn, I mean, you got to mow it, you got to water it, you got to fertilize it, or
Right.
maybe you don't, but you got to maintain it.
Right.
But if you have a pretty low maintenance, drought resistant, landscaped area,
It's actually less maintenance, and it
to do
takes
a
a
dang
lot
thing.
less water. A lot less water, yeah. Because around here we have to start mowing in February.
Yeah.
It starts growing.
Yeah.
It's just nuts.
It is crazy. So that's smart. Maybe that's what we need to do with our front yard.
Yeah. So
Again, another reason to have you come over.
right. So I guess in general, sustainability is a little bit lighter footprint on the land, and you can do a lot with your yard to make it a little bit more sustainable.
So for our listeners, what are some of the problems that you solve for homeowners, or you mentioned builders? So what are some of the main top 3 or 4 things that you solve for your clients?
Well, you mentioned earlier just having an overgrown yard or having grade changes. A lot of what we can do is make the circulation work better.
Okay.
Make the indoor-outdoor feel better. Raise grades, change the site around the home so that it actually so that it functions better. There's a lot of lost spaces in people's yards that aren't usable. We help find the best use for every part of the yard.
Okay.
And you mentioned builders. It's a good point. There are a lot of builders that need to put in a landscape plan after they build a home. Some of them don't put a lot of time or energy or thought into
Very
that.
little. Very
Most
little.
of them don't even think about it until they're like, oh, crap,
Yeah.
we built
Yeah.
the building, now what?
Yeah. So a lot of what I do is I fix some mistakes that could have been headed off if we had been involved earlier in the process.
Probably save some money for them had they done it initially versus having to redo it after the fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I fix stairs that don't work, walkways that are in the wrong place, people parking on lawns. I solve a lot of those funky little problems for people.
You mentioned a Christian, which kind of got, I circled this because it's one of the questions we were going to ask anyways, but you mentioned a no-maintenance garden and if it's achievable. Tell us more about that.
So that's a question that every homeowner asks at some point in the process.
Yeah. Okay.
They'll say something like, and no maintenance, or as low maintenance as possible. And there's no such thing as a low maintenance garden.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a low maintenance anything. Even if you paved your entire yard, you would still have to do something with all the leaves that fall on it from your neighbors, from the weeds.
Seal
that come
it,
up from
treat it. Yeah.
Yeah, you still have to take care of it. Things outside get dirty and
slippery.
and mossy and messy. So what we do to make sure it's a lower maintenance garden is think about how the planting is going to work together, how the whole system can work so that we're not always out there fussing with every last little plant. If we can plant things in large groupings, it's easier to maintain. There are certain plant selections that are much lower maintenance than others. Perennials, everybody loves, like daylilies, for instance, or echinacea. They're beautiful in the summer. They die back in the winter, and then you have to do something with with the stalks. You have to deadhead them, and then you've got this bare spot in your garden. So there's ways to design around that. A lot of homeowners actually don't mind the maintenance. And if it's a large estate garden, a lot of times they have people to take care of it for them. So at that point, it doesn't matter as much.
Yeah. At that point, it's just money.
Yeah, it's just money. So a no maintenance garden is impossible. A low maintenance garden is possible if it's designed correctly.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. Give us some tips on the design or some thoughts on the design, the proper design for a lower maintenance.
So a lot of what we do is we'll create areas that are very simple on the ground plane, either patios or crushed rock, or areas that kind of fill up more of the ground with paved materials, and that's easier to maintain than a lot of planting.
Yeah,
but you can't just pave everything up to the fence. That looks terrible,
really bad,
and
not good for resale value down the road.
Yeah, and it makes an unhappy place to spend time in.
Sure.
So you have to be thoughtful about where your plantings go, and if you can limit the size of the beds and the variety of plants, it's easier to maintain. And if you pick the right plants, they're drought tolerant. They survive in the summer without water. Yeah. If you limit lawn, that's less maintenance. So those are some of the ways.
Okay. So here's my big question. We built, remodeled a house in 2013. Yeah. And every time, obviously the focus was building the house, and then all of a sudden we have this nice house, and same thing. We basically
neglected the
house was totally overgrown, huge trees and. What are those big rhododendron? But you couldn't even see the house from the main road. You didn't even know that there was a house there. The driveway was even overgrown. So I just came in and hired a company, and just said, bulldoze it, dump the trees. We're talking two huge trees, and all of a sudden it was a whole new look. The neighbors were like, we don't really have neighbors, but people would drive by and they'd stop in and they'd be like, holy cow, we never knew that this was back there. And I was like, well, it never was. It was a 1927 farmhouse. Yeah. But, and that we rebuilt it. But now that it's wide open and everything, bottom line, the checks that I wrote for landscaping and all that stuff were just ridiculously huge. So tell us how somebody would go about, I guess, budgeting for something. So what's the process for calling you and saying, well, like for Christian, let's walk Christian through the next steps?
So I got a house in North Seattle. Yeah. It's actually a bigger lot than normal. Most homes in Seattle are 4,000 to 5,000 square feet for the lot. And we got an 8,200 square foot lot. So it's a good sized lot. A little harder to maintain because of that. And like I said, the front is overgrown and we couldn't even see the house. But let's kind of go over, I don't know, what exactly you're asking, Dan.
What's the process? So do you come out, do you sit down the consultation to the budgeting, to the, I don't want to say bids, but the budgeting, all of that good stuff?
Yeah, I can walk you through that. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is look at the site. So meet with you. If it's a couple, it's great to have both people there.
Yeah, you definitely need both people there.
Because there's never in the history of my job have I had, both halves of a partnership agree on anything. Like it just doesn't happen. So a lot of what I do is mediating, but
you're like us. We're part-time psychologists as well.
So get everyone who's kind of a stakeholder in the room, and then walk the yard, look at all the issues. I listen to what the client wants to do with what their dreams are, what they're hoping to achieve.
And then you turn to the other client, you ask them the same thing, and they're totally different.
Right. And every client is different. Yeah. Every project is completely different, although everyone does want a fire pit right now.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah. So we listen to all of that, and then take our new knowledge of the site, and we go back and come up with a design proposal. We usually work in kind of 3 phases. The first phase is really fun, and this is where maybe the visuals might come in, is we do what's called a schematic plan, where we take the whole yard, lay everything out, think about the circulation, the paving, what each area is going to be, where the features are going to be, how we make the connections, what it looks like from the street. We start to think about planting, and we render it, and it's a beautiful drawing, and it usually
cool.
And homeowners just go crazy. They love it.
Yeah. Because they're seeing the end way before you can actually see the end.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. We give images to kind of key them into certain parts of the plan. and they get really excited. That's the probably the most fun part is that initial phase, the schematic plan. And then we meet with the owners and make sure that they love what we're doing. 99% of the time they do.
Okay.
And then we move forward with what's called a pricing set.
Okay.
Because we want to very early on let the homeowner know how much things are going to cost roughly.
Is there a deposit up front for the architectural design?
Yeah. So we would put together a scope of work and proposal.
Perfect. Okay.
And then they would sign that, and then we can get
Great.
started.
Okay.
Yeah, and the pricing set's really important because it helps the homeowner know kind of what everything's going to cost, and then we can tailor the construction documents for what they think they can afford to build, instead of designing everything and having them pay for everything and then not having enough money. We can just tailor it exactly.
Exactly. So I got to give you some contact info real quick. So Project Groundwork creates distinct gardens reflecting the personality of their owners while respecting the environment. They understand the ecological systems at work in the landscape and know how to build long-lasting, sustainable landscape projects. We find ways to make your outdoor dreams a reality for projects large and small. You can email them for a free on-site consultation at info@projectgroundwork.com or call 206-708-1862. That's 206-708-1862, and just ask for Mark. Mark, thank
There's
you.
more Seattle
Appreciate your
Real
time.
Estate
You're
Radio
welcome.
coming up here on Business Radio 1300 KKOL.